Welcome to John Gets Games. Today I'll be doing a full 3-player playthrough of Cry Havoc. In this game, there is a planet that is being assaulted by 3 different asymmetric factions, and then there is a 4th faction who are the natives trying to fend everybody off. In this game, that native faction will be controlled by the different players as a non-player character, and what each player is trying to do is control the most crystals in the regions out on the board when scorings happen. They're going to do that by moving into different regions, fighting the natives as well as each other with a very interesting battle mechanism where you decide if you are more interested in controlling that region, maybe taking prisoners, or lastly just trying to kill as many people off as you can to get points for it. I'll explain the rest of the game as we're actually playing it, so I think at this point, let's jump in. Here is our board fully set up for our 3-player game of Cry Havoc. We will be playing as the yellow humans over here, the second player will be the blue pilgrims, and finally the third player will be the red machine player over here. The first part of every turn of the game is revealing the next event token on the scoring track. So for the beginning of the game, we all have 0 points. We get to flip this one over and see that it says, we get to place 1 crystal into every region without crystals currently out on the board. There are 3 different color crystals in the game. The greens count as 1 crystal, yellow counts as 3, and red counts as 5. So when we look out at the board, we see there are 2 in these middle rings. There's 5 in this spot right here, but there are no crystals in this central spot, and as well as all the regions around the outside, so let's put them down. Now each player is going to draw the top 4 cards from their deck, and we all start with a custom asymmetric deck that is only 8 cards big, so we're going to take half of those cards as our starting hand, and then each other player will also draw up their cards. We've now reached the round actions part of the turn, where each of us are going to take 1 action, and then we'll slide this down, then we'll all take an action again, and then finally do a 3rd action before we move on to the next phase of the turn. So we are the starting player. Let's start with our first action. There are 5 different action options available to us, and 3 of those 5 have to do with playing cards from our hand. So let's look at the anatomy of the cards that we have here. The first thing you might notice is in the top left corner we have these various symbols. There are 3 different types, so this Drop Troopers card actually has a little bit of all of them. The first one is a move action. The second one are enlist actions, so this has 1 move, 2 enlist. And the last one are these 2 wrenches. This allows us to build and activate buildings that we have in our area. Now, when you actually activate one of the 3 actions that you can take from your hand, you're going to discard any number of cards that you want and sum up the number of symbols for that action that you want to do. So if I discard this card, I'm not going to be able to get all 3 of these. I might choose to do the wrenches, and then I won't get the benefit of the enlisting or the movement actions. Now, it's building buildings are fun, and I'm going to get to those pretty soon, but it's important to note you can't build buildings in your starting headquarters, and you also can't build a building unless you're in a region that you control and doesn't have any battles going on. So at the moment, we can't actually build on our first turn, and when we look at the board around us, we see these green tokens. Now these are Trog tokens. They're essentially the natives on the planet who are going to fight us if we try to get into their territory. This zone down here just has this purple icon, which is an event, and these events are beneficial, they're random, but they do good things for the player who unlocks them. So we're definitely going to be moving down here at some point on this turn, and we could potentially build a building down here on our turn, but I don't think we want to do that for some reasons I'll get to probably on turn 2. So for now, looking at the cards we have in hand, I think the best thing for us to do is to, let's see, discard this Drop Troopers card in order to bring on 2 new troops. Now the reason we want to do this is because right now we only have 4 troops here, and if we look at the rest of the cards in our hand, we could discard all 3 of these to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these arrows, which would be 6 movement. And right now we have 4 people. If we had 6, we could move all 6 of those people in a really big movement later on in our turn, so that'll be our first action, is hiring some more people. This card goes into our discard pile, and we add 2 more people in. It's now the Pilgrim player's turn, and they've decided they're going to do an action that does not actually involve the cards in their hand. They're going to do a draw action. Now, out on the board, there are 4 of these draw piles. We see 2 of them right here, and they're associated with the different terrains. We have a water terrain and a mountain terrain, and each of these decks has various cards that you can draw from, but one thing that is always the same is that every card in this deck is going to have 2 movement actions in the top left corner. The thing that's going to change is the text in the bottom, which are, again, usually battle combat type things. So this whole deck has 2 movements. This whole deck has 3 wrenches. We see this desert deck has 1 of each, plus this little icon here, which means that after you play that card, you can draw a new card from the top of your deck, but only 1 card, no matter how many of these asterisk extra card icons you draw. And finally, we have the marsh, which lets you enlist more people. The Pilgrim player decides to keep this card, and it goes directly into their hand, and then we'll just shuffle this guy into the deck for the next time. The machine player has decided they are going to start the game by moving out. They have these 4 move icons on their cards. They're going to discard both of these. And they have 4 machines right here. They're going to plunk 1 over here to Sapos Deep. And then the other 3 are all going to go over here to the Fairlost Bank. Whenever you enter a region with these event tokens, you flip them over and see what they say. This says that they get to draw 1 Terrain Tactics card. That's pretty great for them. If we look at the Fairlost Banks, well, they will be battling. This is a water and desert location. What this means is that these terrain cards over here, which go into our decks as we build them, they can only be used in combat if the icon in the bottom of the card matches the actual location of where that combat is happening. So if the machine player has to draw one of these cards over here, they're very likely to grab a water or desert card so that it will be usable in this combat right here to potentially help them win more effectively. So when they look at these two, the water one, that gives them 2 movement, which is not great for them because they've already moved. So I think they're going to grab one of these desert cards. Again, it has this little asterisk extra draw thing so that when you play this card, you get to draw another one from your deck, so it kind of cycles through your deck relatively well. And it's also worth noting that now that they have moved into this zone here with the Trogs, and I do have to evaluate this event as well, but we need to put an attack battle token down, so we'll place that there, and we put this machine token on it to show that they are the aggressor. This is now a battle region, so units are not able to ever go into battle regions that have already started. In fact, they can only leave a battle region if they are leaving behind twice as many units as their opponent. So yeah, the red player definitely does not need movement anymore. They'll put this into their hand and then evaluate the other event. This one says that they get to place up to 2, oh wow, units from their reserve into this region. That's, okay, well, we have even more machines on the board. They are definitely going to be winning this battle. That was a very good event for them to have. And finally, we'll flip over this Trog token. Oh, okay, well, this is interesting. So these tokens right here will put 1, 2, or 3 Trogs into a region, but they will also put 1, 2, or 3 crystals into a region. They happen to get the 3 Trog one. These are pretty rare, actually. So even though the red player has tons of units, they are going to have to fight more, but the rewards are better. We're going to put 3 crystals down in that region. There are now 4 there. And since the machine player is now in this region uncontested, they get to put a control token down into it to show that they control it. We've all taken 1 action, so let's move to the second action of the round. So it comes back to us, and let's go ahead and stick with that plan we talked about before. Let's discard all 3 of these cards. So we actually have no cards in our hand at all, but we're going to get 6 movement out of it, which will allow us to go into all 3 of these regions and get 3 of these event tokens, which, as we can see, are pretty darn good. But before we actually evaluate that move action, let's look at this Recon Team card. You might have noticed that it has these exclamation points, and down on the bottom of the card, we see that it says that you may change your position on the upcoming initiative track whenever you do any of these different things, which moving definitely is. So looking over here, this initiative is our current turn order. That's why we're going first, Pilgrims are going second, and Machines are going third. But next round, we are going to match the initiative with whatever the upcoming initiative is. So we could use this in order to change our position. We could go third next round if we wanted to, or we could stay in first. And this is an interesting decision because going first lets us jump on really good opportunities that might be on the board. However, going third would allow us to have the last movement before the end of the round happens, so we can see how all of our opponents posture and then kind of take advantage of what they've done, considering they can't do anything once we do our third action. All that being said, I think we probably want to stay in first, so let's go ahead and just discard this without actually modifying the initiative tracks. So with 6 movement, we'll move 1 person down here, and then we'll put probably 3 people over here and 2 over there. It's a bit of a crapshoot which one is going to be better, but putting 3 over here is good because it's closer to the machine player who has lots of units on the board, although there is this 1 extra region here. So I think that's probably the right thing to do, and now let's go ahead and evaluate all of these events. First of all, we have this Ashless Wetlands event. It says we can draw 1 Terrain Tactics card. Well, that's great considering we have no cards in our hand at the moment. When we look at the terrain we're going to be battling in, we have some water, we have a marsh, we have another marsh, and a mountain over here. Now you might think that it would make most sense to do marsh, however, the bonus for marsh is enlisting 2 people into the board, and we've already done a bit of enlisting. I think the thing that matters more to us is taking this mountains card here. It will help us in this battle if we choose to, or if we don't spend it in the battle, it's going to get us 3 wrenches for next turn, which will really help us build buildings out on the board, and our buildings are really quite powerful. In fact, all the buildings in the game are, and we're definitely going to want to start getting those down, so let's put this into our hand. Since there are no opposing units in this area, we immediately take control of it. All right, let's see what the Jindar sound is going to get for us. This one says, We could place up to 2 of units from our reserve into this region. Okay, well, looks like we gambled wrong over here. We get to put 2 more people there. We are in a very dominant position for that area. I guess we probably would have been better to put 3 over there, but we had no way of knowing. And the final one, this is from the Dark Walled. This is going to get us, lets us place 2 crystals into any one region. So when scorings happen, each player is going to get 1 point for each crystal in regions they control. Now, scorings happen at variable parts throughout the game, and I'll explain that when we get to it, but for now, I think let's tuck this into the ashless wetlands, making that area a little bit better. Good reason for this is because this is only adjacent to the Jindar Sound, as well as, you see this little arrow here, it's actually pointing at a spot that's across the board, but it means that this is only adjacent to 2 other areas, whereas this one right here, you can see is adjacent to 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's much harder to defend. We're going to keep these controlled over here. Now we get to see how many trogs we have to deal with. This says place 1 trog token and 1 trog crystal. Oh my goodness. This is crazy. We have 1 million people in this region, and this is going to be the easiest fight ever. That is a bit unfortunate for us, and let's see what this one says. It says place 2 trogs and 2 crystals down into the region. Of course, when we start battles, we have to put battle tokens down. We'll evaluate this one first, and then we'll evaluate this one next over here. Our action is now fully resolved. However, there's one more thing we can do on our turn if we want to. Each of us has 2 of these skill cards here. Now, one of them says default, and that means that every single time you play this game, you will always have this default skill card here. In fact, it says for a beginner game, you should only play with the defaults. But once you've maybe played the game a couple times to make it a little more interesting, you can draw a random new skill from a pool of 4. So this is the one that we pulled right here. So let's take a look at both of these, actually. The first one says occupation. And this allows us to discard a card from our hand to immediately score 1 point for every human-controlled region on the board. So this might get really good for us later on if we're controlling a bunch of regions. Right now we're only controlling 2, so it probably does not make sense for us to discard a card to activate it. But the other one says recon forces. Now, the text here says, for each battle in which the humans are attackers, we can draw 1 terrain tactic from the deck. We are currently attackers in 2 different battles, so let's use this. We kind of spin it to the side, and we'll refresh this at the beginning of the overall next turn, and let's draw 2 more cards into our hand. Considering the Dark Walled is going to be our most difficult attack since we have 2 people to the 2 trogs on the board, let's go ahead and draw 1 mountain and 1 swamp from the area. We already grabbed a mountain, so we're going to have lots of these wrenches in our hand if we don't actually use this. But more importantly, we now have lots of cards in our hand that we can use to modify this battle to make sure we actually come out ahead and control the region. The Pilgrim player now decides to discard both of these cards in order to get 3 movement actions. They're going to move 1 Pilgrim into the Sansa Grove, and they're going to move 2 of these into Sendero. We now get to evaluate the events. So this one says they get to draw 1 Terrain Tactics card. I think considering this is a desert and a marsh, they're going to take a marsh card into their hand. And now for the other event token. Actually, I guess these are actually exploration tokens. This says place 2 crystals into any one region. And they've decided to add them to the Sansa Grove. There's 3 right there, so we may as well just swap it out for a yellow crystal. And now lastly, we see they are starting a battle. And let's see how many trogs they're going to fight. It's going to be 2 trogs with 2 crystals. So these guys plunk down, and we'll just add 2 by removing 1 and putting a 3 down. The machine player decides they want to draw a mountain card into the deck, so they're going to look at these 2 and pick 1. So they grabbed 1, and they'll just shuffle this one back into the deck. That finishes the second action. We'll now move to the third. So it's our turn to take an action, and when we look at our cards, specifically this regroup card, down in the bottom, it says battle. For each region adjacent to the battle region, we can remove 1 unit and place it onto a battle objective, which I will explain shortly, but what that means is if we are fighting in this region, we would potentially be able to pull a unit into this region, but the problem is you're never able to pull units out of battle regions. Battle zones are effectively locked down, so this battle text on the bottom doesn't really do much for us, so I think what we should do, especially considering we want to save these cards for next turn, either for the battle or for building buildings, let's go ahead and discard this card to enlist 2 new people, get them down into our headquarters, and we can potentially use them next turn. It's the Pilgrim player's turn, and they have decided to build stuff, so we finally get to see how these buildings work. We see they're going to discard all 3 of these cards, so they have 6 total wrenches to play with. And if you look at their buildings, you'll see that it costs 2 wrenches to build each of them and 1 wrench to activate. And you can activate a building on the same turn it gets built. So essentially with 6 wrenches, they're going to build 2 buildings and activate both of them. They've decided they're going to build a harvester and an extractor. And if you look at the bottom here, the harvester says you add 1 crystal from the supply to your pool. So the Pilgrim player is a little bit unique. They have this spot on their board called the Crystal Pool, which is, I guess, the crystals that they are doing research on. They're kind of like a super advanced alien race. We're not really sure why they're on this planet, but they appear to be researching these crystals. So this harvester will put crystals out into this crystal pool, and the Pilgrim player is able to get points for the crystals that they have in their pool. They can do special things with those. And then the extractor over here, it just adds one crystal from the supply into the region. And again, the more crystals in a region that you control, the more victory points you get. So it makes sense for them to build both of these guys. And of course, you're only allowed to build buildings in regions you control, which they obviously do. I forgot to put the token down. And they'll slide these buildings in here. Now, it's important to note you can have multiple different types of buildings in a region, but you're never allowed to have more than one of a given specific building. So we're now going to activate both of these. The extractor is going to put a crystal into the region, and then the harvester is going to take a crystal from the supply, and it gets added into their pool. It's also important to note that buildings cannot be activated more than once within a given build/activation phase, but within a given round, you can activate them multiple times on the different turns. Just each time you have to discard a card that has wrenches on it. And we come to the machine player, who is also going to be discarding 2 cards to get a total of 6 wrenches. So they're also going to be building 2 of their buildings and activating both of them. Now you notice the machine player has 5 different building options available to them, whereas the other 2 players only have 3. I guess it makes sense, they are machines. And they've decided they're going to build a shred drone, and they are also going to build a orbital sniper. So let's look at what both of these do. The shred drone down here says it can kill 1 enemy in an adjacent region, including battle regions, and the orbital sniper says you can kill 1 enemy in any non-battle region anywhere on the board. So just like orbital bombardment, just destroys somebody from many miles up in space. They're only allowed to build in this region for the moment because it's the only spot they control that isn't their headquarters. So both those goes down. The Shredder drones activate, and like I said, they destroy 1 unit in an adjacent battle area. So that's just going to kill one of these trogs before the battle even begins. And now the orbital sniper goes off, but it is not able to kill one of these trogs because they are in a battle right now. So the only valid targets out on the board are this 1 pilgrim in headquarters, this 1 pilgrim in that zone over there, these 2 humans in headquarters, and this 1 human over here. And the machine player looks around, they see that we have a lot more people on the board than the pilgrim player does, so they decide they're going to destroy this human from space. This is pretty unfortunate for us, but we do still get to keep control of this region. Now that we've all taken our actions, we move on to the next phase, which is battle. For that, we're going to bring in this battle board here, and we're going to start with the first battle on the map, which is this one over here for the Fairlost Banks. The very first thing that happens in a battle is you add 1 crystal into the region where the battle actually happens, so having battles in regions makes them more lucrative to control. Now the attacking player takes all of their units from the given region that has the battle, and they're going to put them down on the 3 objectives on this battle board. The first objective is region control, and it's really simple. Whoever has the most units in this area when we resolve it, and we'll go top to bottom, will control the region, and ties go to the defender. You also get 2 points to the player who controls the region, so that's pretty nice. Next up, we have capture prisoners objective. So this happens after we figure out who's going to control the region, and whoever has a majority in this area is going to take a prisoner from one of the objectives, whether it be up here or down below, and that goes into the area, and they score 1 point for that at the end of every single turn. So that's a pretty good thing. At this point, that would potentially be up to 5 points, considering the game will probably be about 5 turns long. And finally, we have attrition, which is not majority at all. Just for every unit down here, you can kill 1 unit from another objective, including down here, although this happens simultaneously, and a player will get 1 point for each unit that gets killed off by attrition. With all these units, the machine player decides they are going to put 2 up in the region control, they're going to put 2 into prisoners, and 1 down into the attrition spot. Now, the player to the left of the player who is aggressing is going to get to control the trog, so that would be the human player, which is us. So we have a couple options. We could put both of these trogs up in the region control so that we would be currently tying the machine player, so they'd have to play cards from their hand in order to do something about that. Another option for us, however, would be to put both of our units down here in attrition. That way, they are going to kill stuff. Now, we know that one of these would be taken prisoner by the machine player, but there's really not much we can do about that. But at least in this case, one of these trogs would kill a machine, which would just reduce the number of machines out on the board, which is quite a lot, which is probably going to be in our best benefit at this point. Once all the defender units have been placed, the attacker can play a card from their hand, but in this instance, the machine player is quite happy with how this battle is going, so they're not going to play a card. And we now can actually play a card from our hand because we are controlling the Trog player. And for instance, we could play this air support card, which would add a unit from the reserve into a battle objective. The problem is that would be a Trog unit, which would go down. We'd lose this card, and we We really need this card in order to win our own battle, so I think at this point we're not going to play any cards into this battle, so we're going to move on to the next step, which is just resolving the different objectives. So up here we see that in region control, obviously the machine player wins. I don't think there was any doubt about that happening, so they're going to score 2 points and they're going to get to take control of the region. And this makes them the first on the board. And here's their region control token. Next up, they are winning the majority for capture prisoners, so they're going to grab one of these trogs down here and put them into a little trog jail, and they're going to get 1 point out of them every single turn, so that's really good for that player. And finally, each player is going to destroy one unit from the other, so we'll just take one of these out, and then this guy also gets destroyed. The non-player trog character does not actually get any victory points for doing this, but the machine player does get 1 point for each unit that they kill, so they get 1 more point, and both these get removed. And this brings the machine player to 3 points. Finally, all units from the winning player go back into the controlled region, and if there were any units from the player who lost the region control, they would then retreat, but I'll explain retreating when that actually happens. And the final thing is we just take this battle token off, and we are now done with that battle. The next battle happens in the Jindar Sound. It's 5 of us humans to 1 trog. We start by adding 1 crystal into that region. So we've got 5 units to the 1 of the trogs. Let's go ahead and put 3 up here in the region majority so that we pretty much guarantee that we're going to win this. The Pilgrim player now controls the trogs, and they need to play quite a few cards in order to do something about that. And let's put the other 2 into this the capture and prisoner area so that we can potentially try to just capture that prisoner without even worrying about it. So now the Pilgrim player takes this, and they are in a really poor situation here. They only have 1 card in their hand, and it's likely they need that card to win their own battle, which means there is really nothing good they can do with this character. So they'll just go ahead and, I don't know, put it down here in attrition. It doesn't really matter. So we are going to win the region control. It's going to get us 2 victory points. And we now control the region. Next up, we are in the majority for capturing prisoners, so we'll just grab this guy here so he's not even going to hurt us. He goes into our own little trog jail, getting us 1 point per turn. And with nobody on the attrition objective, nothing's going to happen. Lastly, we bring all of our troops back into this region. They were very successful with that battle, and we can remove this token. Darkwalled is the next battle, so we'll add a crystal in, and this is going to be a much fairer fight at 2 versus 2. So let's look at the battle effects on the 2 cards that we have in our hand. First of all, we have air support, which lets us add 1 unit from our reserve right into the battle objective. So that's really great. We just add somebody who isn't even on the board. And the other one is not that great for us. It says resolve the battle objectives in reverse order beginning with the attrition objective. So I don't know, we could potentially be a little tricky. We could put both of our people potentially down here, but the problem is we could potentially kill things up here, but in order to actually win the region control objective, which is our main priority, we need to have people up there. So I think let's just go with the not very creative path of just plunking both people down there and understanding that we're probably going to have attrition happen and we're going to lose some people, but we just really want to control that region. The Pilgrim player sees that we have a couple cards in our hand, so they decide, instead of just plunking down here where they figure we probably have an answer, they're going to be cheeky. They're going to put 1 here and 1 down there, so they're winning the capture prisoner objective and they're winning the attrition. So if things stay as they are, then we'll lose both of our people. 1 will be lost to be a prisoner, so we won't even have them to be deployed out on the board later on, and the other one will be just killed. So I think, well, at this point, we could just stop, but the better thing for us to do so that we can actually keep some people, I think let's go ahead and still use this air support card up here. It lets us drop 1 person in from our supply. Let's just go here. We won't lose a prisoner, and we'll only lose 1 person. So now it goes to the Pilgrim player who does not play a card. It makes no sense for us to play our final card, so we're done, and we can resolve the objectives. We see that we are definitely controlling up here, so we'll get 2 victory points. This brings us up to 4. And we now control the Darkwalled. Next we do capturing prisoners, but when there's a tie, nothing happens, so we just bounce right here. And finally, the Trog player is going to kill somebody. It doesn't really matter who, because both of these have been evaluated already, so this will get removed. Again, the Trog player does not actually get victory points, but we just lose this person from the board. Goes back to our supply, and we've now fully resolved that part of combat, so we now put the units back on the board. Our units go here into the Darkwalled. However, there are surviving Trog units. And what happens here is these units actually get removed, but we're going to take one of these Trog nest tokens. They're orange, not green like the ones that go on the board. And the main difference is that these tokens just put Trogs down. They don't actually add crystals down to the board. We'll take a random one of these, and now the Pilgrim player decides what region to put this into where they're going to retreat, and it has to be a region that is not controlled by anybody and also does not have a battle. Looking at all these things considered, they're going to throw it over here to try and mess things up. This is potentially a nice, easy spot for us to grab, and it no longer is. And lastly, we remove this battle token. There's one last battle on the board. It is for Sendero, so we'll add a crystal to the battle, and now it's going to be 2-on-2 with the Pilgrims versus the Trogs. The Pilgrim player decides to put both of theirs up in the majority section, and now it goes to the Trog player, who is actually going to be controlled by the machines. The machine player decides to put both Trogs down into attrition, so now the Pilgrim player can play a card from their hand, and they decide to. They're going to play this air support card. It's, well, we've seen this kind before. It says they get to add one unit from the reserve into one battle objective. And they decide it makes sense to go right here in the middle so they could potentially capture a prisoner from one of the Trogs. The machine player decides they don't want to spend cards in this battle, so it is going to be over, very similar to a couple of the battles in this first round. So they are going to, the Pilgrims win the mission control. They're going to get 2 points. They now control the Sendero area. We now evaluate the prisoner's objective, so they get to grab one of these Trogs. That's interesting. All of us grabbed a Trog prisoner, so it kind of evens out the score advantage that all of us were going to get from getting these guys. And finally, this Trog is going to kill one of these Pilgrims. They go back to the supply, and that finishes out the combat. The Pilgrim figures go back on, and there is one Trog left, which means it gets removed from the board, and we need to put another nest token down. The machine player decides they're going to put it right here. There's already one of these there, so that region is pretty bad. Actually, this is bad for both the Pilgrims and us, because this is adjacent to us. Definitely a very good move by the machine player. And finally, we're just going to remove this battle token, and we are done with all the battles. There is one other thing we have to do after every single battle that the Pilgrims fight in, and that has to do with this skill card they have. Now, this is actually a passive card. They don't use it during the action phase. We see it says Data Extraction. After each battle with Pilgrim units, you may add one crystal from the battle region to your pool. So we're going to take this crystal from that region and add it into the pool. I'm sure the Pilgrim player will start using these relatively soon, and the main way they do it is using this examination ability. We see that they have to spend a crystal from the pool, but then they get 1 point for every crystal that is still in the pool. So they have to remove them, but they're probably going to want to make a big pile of crystals in here through battles and also doing the harvester, and then squeeze some points out of it. Now every player gets 1 point for every prisoner they have, and we all have one Trog, so that goes forward just like that. And we would now evaluate the scoring, but nobody actually enabled it, so it just doesn't happen, and I'll explain how that all works when it actually happens in the game. It's now time for turn 2, and the first thing we do is evaluate the next event. So we look at the score track, and we see that this one right here is the next one, so we'll flip that over and see what it does. It says that each player in turn order can add one unit to any one region that they control. We are still first, so let's go ahead and add one unit into the Darkwald, where we are currently the weakest. The Pilgrim player adds one into Sendero, and the Machine player adds one into the Farallas Banks. They already are really strong there, but they figured they can branch out. Now we would need to make the current initiative match the upcoming initiative, but it already does, so we don't need to mess with anything there. All players now refresh all of their skills. We were the only one who used one that actually got tilted, so we refresh it so we can use it again. And now all players are going to draw 4 cards, and we move into the round action phase. So when we go to draw cards from the top of our deck, we realize that there are only 4 left. We add that into our hand. We had 1 card left, and it's also important to note that you have a hand limit of 7. If you have more than 7 at this point, you have to discard down. So we've got quite a few options on our turn, and next time we need to draw cards, we're just going to shuffle up our discard pile and have a variety of new cards in there for us. Now that we have drawn up the rest of our deck, there's one card in particular I want to point out. In fact, it's going to be our action for this turn. We see that it says Expeditionary Force, and down the bottom it doesn't say battle, it actually says action, enable scoring. It says during the scoring phase, the human player will additionally score 1 victory point for every human control token out on the board. So every player has 1 card in their deck that can enable scoring, and the key thing is that only 1 player can enable scoring per round. So we're going to take this enable scoring token right here. We're going to slide it up here so we know at the end of the round we will be doing scoring, and the way scoring works is every single player will get 1 point for every crystal they control, so this is going to help out the red and blue players. However, like the card said, I will also get 1 point for every region that I control. Right now I only have 4, but I have some tricks up my sleeve to make sure that we're controlling many more regions than that when this turn ends. The Pilgrim player is going to do a move action. Now, first of all, you might notice this little symbol here. Only the Pilgrim player has access to it. It does not have the little asterisks that the Desert has, and that means for every card that the Pilgrim discards that has this icon, they get to draw another card from their deck. So they can cycle through their deck faster than everybody else. I guess is their super intelligence. And then, of course, they have this one, which has the exclamation points, which lets them change the initiative track. So they're going to get 3 movement. They're going to draw 1 card, and they decide that they want to be first in the upcoming initiative track over here. So with these 3 movement, they're going to take this person and go here, and they're going to take this person and move once, twice to jump into the region. Now, like I said, regions are locked once battle starts, but that only happens after the one given move action is done. So now that they have used all of them, we can look at what the exploration is. It says, draw 2 cards from your deck. Oh my gosh, so I guess they're actually going to draw 3 cards from the deck at this point and have a pretty healthy hand. And of course there are trogs here, so we're going to start a battle and see how many there are. It is 2 trogs and 2 crystals, which is the usual result. The machine player now plays all 3 of these cards for 5 movement, and they are going to move 2 of these units down into the Foglands and 3 of these up into the Sahar Ridge. They're leaving the Fairlost Banks completely empty, but at the moment, there's no way any opponents can actually get in there because even though the Pilgrims are over here, they're locked into this combat and nobody has actually entered this zone yet, so that's a pretty good move for them. First things first, let's see what the exploration tile does. It says they get to draw a terrain tactics card, so that's pretty good for them. And they've decided to draw a water terrain card. Next up, we look to see what kind of Trog menace they have to face, and it is 3 Trogs. That's not very good. They only have 2 people here right now, but I think they have some things they can do about that. So 3 Trogs come in, as well as 3 more crystals. So if they own this region at the end when it scores, that's 3 extra points for them. This also becomes battle site number 2, and then battle site number 3 is over here, and let's see, this is, oh, that's the exact opposite. They have 3 people over here. There's only 1 Trog there, and we only add 1 crystal to that region. The machine player now wants to activate both of their skills, so let's take a look at what they are. The first one says Moving City. This is their default, so they always have this as an option. They can move one of their structures to an adjacent region that they control. And the other one says Software Update. This is the random one they pulled from their pool of 4. It says they can remove 1 card from their hand from the game, and then draw 1 card from your deck or from a Terrain Tactics deck. So they have decided to actually get rid of this Observer's card, which is interesting because this is the one that lets them change their position on the initiative track. They're essentially saying for the rest of the game, they are going to be at the whims of the other 2 players as far as what turn they're going to be, but they don't like the icons up here very much, so they're going to remove this from the game. But this lets them draw a mountain card from the deck, put it in their hand with 3 wrenches, which seems like something that they definitely like, and now they're going to go ahead and move one of their buildings. They're going to grab their Shred Drone Swarm and move it into the Fairlost Banks. So this can now, for an activation of 1 wrench, remove 1 unit from a battle, and it is adjacent to 4 different regions, including this one where the machines are actually currently outnumbered, so that's a pretty good position for this building to be. That's it for the first round of actions. Let's move on to the second. Well, my original plan was to spend these wrenches and then build an airfield. It would be our first building, and what the airfield does is it lets us place a control token on an adjacent unoccupied region, which meant that we could put it down in, say, this region right here. The problem is now that the machine player, we didn't expect them to come over this way so hard, so we have all these units here and not a lot of great places to send them. So it probably makes more sense to move them into this region so that we can, well, take control, get a couple more crystals for the scoring that's going to happen. But also, this region right here is adjacent to this region, which is adjacent to this region, so it can kind of gets us into this nice area where there are 5 crystals over here. It's probably going to become pretty hotly contested. So I think what actually makes sense is we're going to spend these wrenches building something that's going to help us with our offense. I'll get to that in the final turn of the game, but for the moment, I think let's go ahead and do a move action. So we'll discard both of these cards. It gets us 4 movement total, and we're just going to take 4 of these people and move them over here. It's kind of unfortunate we have these people in our headquarters just kind of chilling, not doing anything, but the way this turned out, I mean, this essentially happened because we spent our first action enabling scoring, and that is going to get us a bunch of extra points. Well, at this point, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to get us potentially 5 extra points, which seems like a pretty good idea. In retrospect, maybe we should have held off on enabling scoring and moved into this region over here to get access to that, that event, but you know what? We've done the action, we have to deal with the consequences, so we've moved into this spot. This is going to be the 4th combat zone of the game, and now let's flip over the first tile. Oh, this is good. We put 1 Trog down and only add 1 new crystal, so this is probably not going to be a crazy region, although now that I've said that, I probably jinxed myself. This is, oh, okay, good. Not bad either. This just adds 2 Trogs to the region, so overall, there are 3 Trogs there. I think that could have been a lot worse considering there were 2 tokens. The Pilgrim player has decided to spend all of these cards for wrenches. We see 1, 2, 3, 4. Both of these cards have the draw extra card symbol, so they'll draw 2 at the end of this turn. And with those 4 wrenches, they're going to spend 2 of them building a power orb. We see this says they can add 1 unit from your reserve to an adjacent battle region with Pilgrim units in it. So they're going to take this one, build it out on the board, and they have 2 wrenches to activate. So they'll activate this and one of their other buildings. they've decided to add the power orb to this region here. Then they activate it, which is going to pull a pilgrim out of their supply and throw them into this battle region over here. So they now have 3 to the 2 trogs. And then over here, they've decided they are going to activate their extractor, which is just going to pull a crystal from the supply and put it down onto the board. The machine player is going to play both of these cards to get 6 wrenches. They'll spend the first 2 wrenches building a factory. We see that this says that you can add 1 unit from your reserve into this region, so it just produces machines. They're going to add this into the Fairlost Banks. They're going to immediately activate it, so a new machine gets created there. And now they're going to activate both their orbital sniper and their shred drones with the last 2 wrenches. These shred drones are going to kill one of the 3 trogs that are in this area, so it's now 2 machines to 2 trogs. And then with this orbital sniper, they can kill any 1 unit not in a battle zone out on the board. Unfortunately, I think they're going to hit us again. They're going to destroy this person, leaving this region empty. I mean, we're safe for the moment because both these regions are locked down with the units, but next turn, this is going to be kind of a scary situation where they could get in there and just, if there's nobody here, they immediately take control and then they become the defenders. So this gets destroyed. Their only other options were these guys on the HQ, which doesn't really make sense. And then there are 3 people over here and 3 people over here, but this seems like a much riper target for the machine player to hit with that orbital sniper. It's now time for action round 3. And we're going to go ahead and discard this card for 3 wrenches, which will allow us to build and activate our first building of the game. Let's go ahead and build this artillery battery. We put this down into this region. Even though it's empty, we still control it, and I think we're reasonably confident we will continue to control it at the beginning of the next round. And if you look at this down on the bottom of the card, it says that we get to place a artillery token into this or an adjacent region, and then during the next battle resolution in that region, the artillery token acts as 2 that will be in the attrition objective. So essentially, we are just bombarding this region or an adjacent one. We see the token looks just like this. So we actually have a very interesting decision now. Originally, we were just going to throw it down into this area so we could kill off a couple of these trogs and get a couple more points, and yeah, points are good. But now, it probably makes sense to actually send this bombardment token into this region here, because it's only going to evaluate when we are in a battle in this region the next time. So this is a bit of a defensive posturing against the machine player, and here's the trick. If the machine player was to invade, I'm not allowed to activate this building. In fact, you're not allowed to activate any building unless it otherwise says so, and I think most of them don't say so, if the region is under a battle. So if somebody invades here before we launch this artillery cannon, it's a bit of a waste. But if we launch it now, it'll stay there and it'll just be ready for the next time there's a battle here. It might stay here all game. It's nice and defensive. There are these 3 gems here, and we just feel pretty weak. Over here, we have 4 units to the Trog's 3, so we're in a reasonably good situation, and we'll be able to use our tactics card to draw a new tactic to be able to maybe do something with this battle. I think this is probably the smarter long-term decision, as opposed to just killing off some Trogs. Speaking of these skill cards, let's go ahead and activate both of them now because this is our last action. So the first one is Recon Forces. This one just lets us draw a card for each battle we're in, and it's only going to be 1 for this round. I think that we're going to go ahead and grab a water battle card because the region that we're fighting in has water, and this one gives us 2 extra movement, which I think is a pretty good thing to have considering how spread out we're starting to get out on the board, and this goes into our hand. Let's see, the bottom says, for each region adjacent to the battle region, we can remove 1 unit and put it into this objective. That's actually great because we have a couple units that are kind of not doing anything next to the battle region, so this could help us sway the battle if we need to. And now let's do the other one. So this is our default. It says occupation. We can discard a card from our hand in order to immediately score victory points equal to every region we control. I think let's go ahead and get rid of this drop troopers card. It would allow us to move one of our people from one objective to another. I think that's less interesting, and at this point we control some regions. Let's get some points. So let's discard this. And looking out on the map, we currently control 1, 2, 3, 4 regions, so that's going to get us 4 victory points right away. With our original plan, we could have used our airstrip maybe even a couple times and taken a couple of the regions, but things are getting crowded and definitely a bit aggressive, so we had to go aggressive ourselves with the artillery, so let's get 4 points. And this brings us all the way up to 9. For the Pilgrim player's action, they've just decided to draw 2 mountain cards. They're going to pick one and shuffle the other one back in. So they've got the one they like, they'll shuffle this in, and there are only 3 of these left. We've definitely been hitting this hard because getting these wrenches is a pretty good ability. And now it goes to the machine player, and they also decide to draw cards, but they're going to take it from the water area. And they picked one and shuffled the other back in. I guess there's only 4 cards in this one, so we're definitely grabbing many of these cards out of these stacks. They're not huge. We're now done with the action round, so we'll move on to battle. This is going to be the first battle region. It is Singe Peaks. So we add a crystal into the region, and then the Pilgrim player gets to put their people down onto the objectives. The Pilgrim player decides to put all 3 of theirs into the region control objective. This is a very important thing for them, and maybe they don't have a lot of confidence in the cards they have in their hand. The machine player controls the Trogs, and they decide to put 1 into capture prisoners and 1 into attrition. That way, they're going to be taking out 2 out of these 3, and 1 of them will be removed from the game in a really annoying way that'd be hard for the Pilgrim player to get it back. The Pilgrim player thinks about it for a little while, and they decide that it's going to be worth it. They're going to play this air support card, which lets them add 1 unit from the reserve into any battle objective. So they'll fly this Pilgrim in, and they'll plop it down right here so that they're going to tie on the prisoner's objective. It now goes to the machine player to play cards, and they decide to pass, and the Pilgrim player decides to pass, so this battle is over. They have won the region control objective, so they're going to get 2 points, and this brings them to 5. They now control the region. They have the same number of units in the prisoner majority, so nothing happens there. And then the Trog player can kill 1 unit, so this guy is going to get eliminated from the board, and that's going to end the battle. So these guys will go back to the region. These Trogs will be removed from the board, and the machine player places this token for the retreating Trogs into this region over here, Marilas, and we'll remove the battle token. That has been fully resolved. But the Pilgrims, remember, they can extract a, they could do, data extraction. They could pull a crystal out of a region with a battle and put it into their pool, but they decide to leave it on the board right now so they can score points for it with the scoring that's going to happen later. The next battle is over here in the Fogland. So the machine player, they only have these 2 characters right now to put down onto the board, and I think they want to control it, so they're going to put them both up here into the regional objective, and now it's up to us to place these 2 Trog tokens. Well, we only have 1 card in our hand, and it allows us to take units from adjacent regions and put them into the region with the battle, so this doesn't have any effect. So I think we could put them both up here and force the machine player to play a card, but I think we probably want to hurt them as much as possible considering they're getting close to us. So let's go ahead and put both Trogs down here into attrition so we can hopefully kill off as many of these machines as we can. It's now the machine player's turn to play cards from their hand, but they decide not to, and we can't, so this just immediately resolves. The machine player is going to win the majority for the region, so they're going to get 2 victory points for that. This brings them up to 6. And they can put a control token down to show that they control that region. Nobody put anything for prisoners, but then both these Trogs are going to kill machines, so both of these machines are going to die. So the machine player does control this region, which is pretty good for the scoring, but it's a very weak control, and I think we're really happy that many of these machine units have been removed from the board considering how close they were getting to some of our stuff over here. And lastly, these Trogs right here are going to retreat because they did not win the region control majority objective. And we get to put this Trog token down, but it has to go in an unclaimed zone, so we only have one option. It'll go down into the Gorge West. Lastly, we take this battle token off, and that resolves that battle, so we can now move on to this battle right here. So we're going to add 1 crystal into that region. It now has 4, so I'll just add a yellow one over here, and now the machine player has these 3 to put down on the board, and they're only going against 1 Trog. They've decided to put 2 into region control and 1 down here in attrition. So it comes to us, and we're in the same position as before. We know that that card we have in our hand does nothing for us, so going here would be pointless. We could go here, actually. It is effectively the same thing as going here. So it goes to the machine player to see if they want to play any cards. Since the Sahar Ridge does have desert terrain, they are going to play this air support card, which lets them drop in 1 unit from the reserve into any objective, and they're going to plop it down into the capture prisoners objective. So it now goes to us. We don't have any good cards to play at all, so we're going to pass. The machine player passes, and now we can resolve the battle. Obviously, the machine player wins the region scoring objective, so they're going to get 2 points. This brings them up to 8. They also win the capture prisoners objective, so they're going to grab this Trog here and put it in Trog prison with the other one, so that's great for them because that means they're not actually going to lose any of their units to attrition, so they don't actually kill anything with this unit, so they lose out on a point there, but they're okay with that. All these units are going to get placed back into the Sahar Ridge, so we're still not super happy with that amount of units that close to our area. And finally, they get to put a control token into that region and remove this battle. Now let's move on to the 4th and final battle. We'll add a crystal into that region, and then we can place our 4 units down, and the Trog player has 3. We know we have this regroup card, which will let us pull in a unit from an adjacent region, so we effectively are going to have 5 people total, but the Pilgrim player does not quite know that just yet. Considering there are 4 crystals in this region, we really want to make sure that we win it. So let's put 3 of our people over there, and we could go down here for prisoner majority. It'd be really easy for the opponent to match that 1-to-1, but if they did that, they'd only be able to put 2 up here, and then we could maybe swing in and use our card to add another one in here, so that Yeah, this seems like a pretty good idea. So now it's going to go over to the Pilgrim player to add the Trogs down. They see that we only have one card in our hand, so they're going to place a bet, put all three here, which means they're currently winning because the Trogs defend well, and they're hoping that the card we have in our hand is not going to allow us to win this, or they're definitely forcing our hand as far as playing that card. So it comes to us, and fortunately for us, we know that this is going to work. If we look out over on the board, I'm not going to move the camera, but we have the Dark Walled where there are three of our units just kind of hanging out, not in a battle. So we can take this guy and move him into objective. So we'll put it into the majority objective over here, and it goes back to the Pilgrim player who, even though they have a bunch of cards in their hand, they decide to pass. This is great because it means we win the regional objective, so we're going to get 2 victory points. This brings us to 11. And we throw a region control token down. And we win the prisoner majority, so we get to grab one of these Trogs here, put them into our Trog jail, and we now have 2 of them, making 2 points for us a turn, which is pretty great. There are no units in attrition, so this ends the battle. All 5 of my units will go back to that region, which is a good thing considering how many machine units are so close to our area, and then these Trogs are going to retreat. The Pilgrim player gets to decide where the retreating Trogs go. It could be either this spot or this spot right here because neither of them are currently controlled. And they've decided to put it here in the Scorch because they're not near it. It's got 5 crystals on it, and they know that both us and the machine player really want to get into this region on the next turn. Lastly, we remove this battle token and we are done with battles. Now each player scores points equal to the number of prisoners they have. So the Pilgrims have 1, the machines have 2, and we also have 2, so that brings us to 13. And finally, we are going to do the scoring, which was enabled. So again, we are going to get 1 point for every region we control, and then every player is going to get 1 point for every crystal in regions that they control. So first things first, we control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 regions, so we're going to get 5 points. That brings us to 18. And now let's start counting up the crystals, and we may as well start with ourselves. Looking out to the map, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Over here we have 7, 8, 9, 10. And then this area has 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's 14 more points that we get. So we were at 18. That puts us at 22, or actually 32. Looking over here, the Pilgrim player controls 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They were at 6 points, so they are now at 18. And now the machine player gets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 for themselves. They were at 10. They are now at 23. There is one other thing I need to do. Actually, in fact, I should have done it when I scored for myself. When I breach this 24-point spot, there is another one of these event tokens on there. And actually, when you jump over an event token spot, you take it up and you put it on top of the next event token in line on the scoring track. And what this means is we are actually going to play an entire less turn to the game. There will only be 4 turns to this game instead of 5 because I was able to jump so far ahead. It also means on the next turn, we will be evaluating both of these events on that turn. And there will be one more turn at the end, which has a final scoring event over here, which is always the same, which just means that everybody scores for all the crystals they control out on the board. So yeah, this is now officially a 4-turn game instead of 5. So let's move into that third turn by evaluating both of these events. The first event is pretty simple. It just says that every player gets to draw 1 terrain tactic card, and this is going to happen in order, but we haven't actually changed the initiative order just yet, so we actually get to pick first. Well, we know we're going to want to move our units around the board, and we might have to do battle in a water region. It depends on how aggressive the machine player gets, so let's go ahead and take a water card into our hand. Let's see, this one lets us add 1 unit from the reserve into a battle objective. This is definitely a good one to have in our hand, should we have it for battle, or just using for moving people around. The Pilgrim player decides to draw a mountain card, and the machine player decides also to draw a mountain card, which means there's only 1 left in the game. The second event says that we need to remove 2 crystals from the region or regions with the most crystals. So when we look out on the board, we see that this region has 5 crystals, as does this one here and this one. In fact, when I'm looking out here, I realize I shorted the machine player by 2 points. They should actually be at 25 points, not 23, so I'm going to fix that right now. My apologies, but that also means that in all 3 of these zones, they're going to lose 2 crystals. So 2 are going to get removed from here, 2 will get removed from here, and then we'll swap out this red one for a yellow one, making that region much less lucrative. Next, we need to update the initiative, so the Pilgrims are actually going to be the first players, and then we're going to go, and then finally the machine player. Again, they remove the card that lets them change this from the game, so it's likely they'll stay at the back for the rest of the game, unless one of us decides we actually want to go last to try and snipe something on the last turn of the game or something like that. Now all players refresh their skills, and they draw 4 cards from their deck. We don't actually have a deck. That means this rather large discard pile. We're going to shuffle this up and then draw 4 cards, put them into our hand. That's probably good enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll be good to start the game, even though actually the Pilgrim player is the one who begins. After drawing 4 cards, the Pilgrim player actually had 9 cards in their hand, so they have to discard 2 to get down to 7, so they're going to discard these to their discard pile and have 7 in their hand. Oops, I also noticed there are 5 crystals over here, which means we do have to remove 2 from that zone. The Pilgrim player decides they're going to discard both these cards to get 6 wrenches. They're going to use 2 of those wrenches to build another harvester into this zone, and then they are going to use the 3 extra wrenches to activate this harvester, and this extractor. The extractor puts a crystal on the board, and both harvesters put crystals into their pool. It's now our turn, and I think we need to get a jump on the machine player by doing some move actions. We have a maximum of 6 move actions in our hand. Let's see, I'm not exactly sure how many we want to do just yet, but let's start with things that are a big priority for us. The first thing I'd say is moving this guy into this zone, because first of all, if the machine player just got in here, they would immediately put their token down and remove this one, so they would be in the advantage. Also, this artillery token does nothing unless there's actually a battle. So if I put this guy here and there's a battle, then I could really make the machine player hurt. So that costs us 1 move action. Next up, I think we should move one of these people into the Sahar Ridge area. This is going to start a battle. And it's not a very good battle right now. It's 4 versus 1. So I think let's spend another move action bringing this person over here. Now this is important because, as I mentioned earlier, you're only able to leave a battleground as long as you're leaving behind twice as many units as your opponent has. So the machine player has 4. If we have 2, that means the machine player can't leave with any of these units. We've essentially locked down a much greater force into one region, which makes us a little bit safer. And right now we've just used, let's see, only 3 of our move actions. And lastly, you know what, I think we should spend 2 more movement in order to get into this zone, because right now it is empty, and that means we actually remove this control token and we put our own down immediately, which is great for us because we can now activate our skill occupation to get an extra point for it. So that ended up being 5 overall movement, and we did start a battle and we are the aggressors, so we'll put our mini down on there, and this region is now locked. As I just mentioned, I think we should probably play Occupation now. It says, discard a card from our hand to immediately score 1 point for every human-controlled region. So let's get rid of this regroup card because, well, it would allow us to recruit people. But right now we only have 3 people not on the board, so I don't think that's a priority. And when we look out on the board, we currently control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 regions. So that gets us 6 victory points. So we go from 32 to 38. Well, the machine player looks pretty miffed at that move, but they decide they're going to discard both of these cards, getting themselves 6 wrenches. They're going to spend the first 2 wrenches in order to build a secondary sniper from the orbit. They're going to put it right in there. They got 3 different machines in there. Then they're going to spend 2 of their wrenches to activate both of these snipers. The first one is going to destroy this person because they are in a non-combat region, and the second one is going to destroy this person from the region. So we definitely got in the machine's way, and they are really smacking us back. The machine player has 2 extra wrenches. They'll use 1 to activate this factory, bringing on another unit onto the field, and they unfortunately don't have a good use for that. Oh no, I'm wrong. The Shredder Jones. They are going to activate this because this region is adjacent to them, using that final wrench to kill this person off. So maybe invading their area was not quite as good of an idea as we thought. Now the machine player can actually move 2 of these units out of that zone. We can now move into action round 2, and it's back to the Pilgrim player. The Pilgrim player discards 4 cards from their hand, and they're going to activate wrenches on all of them. One of them is going to allow them to draw a new card into their hand. This one would allow them to change the initiative, but right now they're happy with going first, so they have 6 wrenches to play with. With the first 2 wrenches, they're going to build their 3rd and final harvester into this region right here. With their 3rd wrench, they're going to activate this extractor over here, which is going to put a crystal into the region. And then with wrenches 4, 5, and 6, they're going to activate all 3 of their harvesters. So this puts 3 crystals into their pool. So it's now our turn, and we are starting to feel really thin on the board after that terrible barrage of death from the atmosphere with the orbital snipers and the shredder drones destroying our guys. We're really getting weak on the board. Right now we just have this Drop Troopers card in our hand. We could spend it for a move action to move this person over here, but then the machine player still has 2 more actions. They could just activate those snipers and destroy this guy again, so that's really not a good use of our entire action. So I think what we should probably do instead is use this Recon Forces skill. If you remember, this is the one that lets us, for each battle that we're in, where we are the attacker, we get to draw one tactics card. So we can essentially buff our hand right now because we did attack over here, even though it's not looking very good for us. Let's go ahead and draw a swamp card. It gives us 2 more recruits. I think we then will do a recruit action. It kind of puts us a little bit behind as far as tempo goes, but we just need bodies on the board in order to compete with the death machine of this this red player over here. So we'll discard these and get 4 people on the board, so hopefully we can be a little bit more flexible in future turns. It's once again the machine player's turn, and they've decided they're going to discard both these cards to activate wrenches again. This card right here is going to let them draw another card from the top of their deck into their hand after they've activated the card. And all they're going to do is activate 4 of their buildings that are out on the board, their machine of death. First of all, this factory right here is going to activate, so it's going to put another one of their units down into that region. Then these shredder drones are going to activate again because, as I said before, you're allowed to activate machines on multiple times within a given turn as long as it is on different action rounds. So these shredder drones activate, they're going to kill this guy off, and what actually happens now, once there are no opposing tokens, the battle token is removed from the board, and now all these pieces are no longer locked. I guess this gambit of ours to run into this region slowed them down quite a bit, so it might end up being a good idea. I'm honestly not sure, but that's how it happened. And of course, there are now 2 orbital snipers that will activate. At this point, the red player, they're looking around. They're going to kill one of the guys from our HQ, but they're also going to kill one of these Pilgrim guys. The Pilgrim player's kind of been doing his own thing over here on the top, kind of hoping everybody would ignore him as he's mining all these crystals on the planet, but they're going to start softening him up, remove this guy so that potentially they could invade that way and start getting into their stuff. So we now go to action round 3. The Pilgrim player is just going to play this 1 card from their hand in order to activate 3 of these wrench symbols, and all they're going to do is hit all 3 of their harvesters, so this one, and that one, grabbing 3 gems, crystals from the supply and putting them into their pool. Once these 3 crystals are added, they actually have 10 crystals total in their pool, and they're now going to activate examination for the first time in the game. We see it says they spend 1 crystal from the pool to get 1 point for every crystal left in the pool, so they'll get rid of this one and get 9 points. So this brings them to 27, jumping over the machine player. It's now once again our turn, and since we have no cards in our hand, literally the only action we can do is to draw a terrain card from one of these piles, or I guess you draw 2 and you choose one. So I think what we should probably do, considering the incredible potency of death that the red player has to kill our people, let's take some of these marsh cards so that we'll have more of these recruit cards into our hand so we can keep putting people out, hopefully as fast as the machine player can kill them off, or maybe we can even reverse the tide and get back out on the board. I'm a little bit concerned with how much territory the machine player is going to be able to take over on the final turn of the game, but we'll see. So let's look at these 2 cards. This first one says you can resolve the objectives in reverse order, which is situational at best, and the other one says we can move up to 2 of our people from one objective to another. I think that's definitely better, so we'll grab this outflank, we'll shuffle this back into the deck, and that's going to end our action. So we go to the machine player, and they're going to play all 3 of these cards for movement. They have 6 movement. This is kind of the big move that we have been dreading. They start by moving from the Sahar Ridge into the Jindar Sound. They immediately take control of this region, so our token gets removed and their token gets put down on the board. For their second move, they're going to take one of these people and move into the Foglands. So that is also going to bump off this control token. They're going to take control of this one back for themselves. That is 2 moves. Next, they're going to use all 3 of these moves over here to invade the Pilgrim player over here in the Singe Peaks. So that's 3 on 2 currently up there. They have 1 more move action. They're going to take this guy and move it into the Faralos Banks. Despite doing 6 movement, that only initiates a single battle, and it's going to be the only battle of this round. Also, it's worth noting that even though there is this artillery token down in this region, there is no battle unless there are figurines of both players in that region. So this is just going to stay here until I get at least one of my units into this spot to reinforce it. Before the machine player takes their action, they're going to use a software update. They're going to use it to discard a card from their hand, from the game permanently, and then they're going to draw a card either from their deck or from a terrain pile. They've decided they're going to grab a mountain terrain card and put that into their hand. So it's time for that one battle. We're going to add a crystal into the region, and then the machine player will place their people onto the objectives. It doesn't appear that the machine player is messing around. They're going to put all 3 of their people up into the top portion of the board. The Pilgrim player does not look happy at all about this. They think for quite a while, and they end up putting both of their people down into the attrition objective. So now it goes over to the machine player if they want to play any cards, and they do. They are going to play this card. It says regroup from each region adjacent to the battle region. They can remove one of their people and put it into any objective. Well, this unit right here is in the Fairloss base, which is adjacent. They are going to swing this one down, and they're actually going to put it, they're thinking about where it makes the most sense. They're just going to put it right down here into the attrition to try and kill something. It now goes to the Pilgrim player to play cards, and they do play a card from their hand. It is Air Support. It lets them add one person from the reserve to any battle objective, and they're going to fly this person right into the prisoner majority spot on the board. So it goes back to the machine player, except they have no more cards in their hand, so they pass, and the Pilgrim player also has no more cards in the hand, so they pass. We can now resolve the battle, so the machine player obviously won. They're going to get 2 victory points for gaining the regional majority. So they now tie the Pilgrim player at 28 points. Next, they get to put their control marker down and kick the control marker of the Pilgrims out. It's worth noting that this building is fine. It stays there. Buildings are never removed from the game, but the Pilgrim player will not be able to actually activate this building as long as they don't control the region. Now we evaluate the capture prisoners objective. The Pilgrim player is quite happy about winning this. The machine player is kicking themselves for not putting this machine in there. They probably should have, but that's a mistake they made. So the Pilgrim player grabs this machine as a prisoner and they throw it into their jail, where they're going to get a point for it at the end of this turn and potentially the last turn of the game. And finally, the Pilgrim player has 2 on attrition, so they get to destroy 2 more of these machines from this objective up here. So these machines still have control, but the Pilgrims get 2 points for that, and there's a lot less machines on the board. So the Pilgrims go up to 29 points. The machine player now puts their unit into this region, and the Pilgrim player has to retreat. And they actually have 3 units, which is much more than the machine player. And the way retreating works is really simple. You just move into an adjacent region that is controlled by the retreating player. If there were none of those, then all these units would be lost. But fortunately for the Pilgrim player, there is, and they're just going to put all of them into this region. So they're really doubling down on that spot there. And lastly, we take the battle token off, and we have now resolved all the battles for this turn. After that battle is evaluated, the Pilgrim player does decide to use this data extraction skill they have, which is passive, so they can grab a crystal from the region that had the battle and put it into their pool. Next, we score prisoners, and everybody has 2 prisoners, so everybody's going to get 2 points. Lastly, we would evaluate scoring if somebody had enabled it, but nobody did, either because they didn't want to or because they didn't have the cards in their hand. So that ends this turn. Let's now move into the 4th and final turn of the game. So, like always, we start the turn by evaluating the next event, and as we can see, the next event says Enable Final Scoring. So that is this token right here. We're going to put it on the Enable Scoring spot on the board. That means that none of us will be able to enable scoring for ourselves, and the only difference between this and our regular enabling scoring is that we're just going to get points for the crystals in the regions we control. Nobody's going to get points for just having a certain number of regions, and because we are enabling this final scoring, this is further proof that this is the final turn of the game. Next up, we would adjust the current initiative to match the future one, but nothing changed in the last round, so this will be the turn order for this final turn of the game. Now everybody will refresh all their skills, draw 4 cards, make sure they don't have over 7, and we'll jump into the first action round. The Pilgrim player is going to start by playing 2 of these telepathic link cards to get 2 movement, and they'll get to draw 2 more cards from their deck. They're just going to take 2 people from here and start a battle back for this Singe Peaks. That makes them the aggressors in this battle, and yeah, that's all that happens there. It's now our turn, and our hand is definitely going to dictate how we're going to play out the last 3 actions of our turn. As you can see, we have a ton of movement actions, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just with these 3 cards. Right now, we don't even have enough people on the board really to action all of those, but I think that that would be a good thing to try and maybe take back some of the area that this machine player has taken already. Now, the risk is that if we don't do this, then the machine player might move into a spot and lock some stuff down. I'm really not sure. I mean, part of me wants to just recruit 3 times so that I can do a bunch of movements on the final turns of the game. We'll finally, maybe just one big movement here. I'm just not sure if it makes sense to jump in early. Like if we spent 3 right now, then we could move maybe all 3 of these people into this zone so that it locks this person down. And on the next turn, maybe then we could recruit 3 people, and on the final turn of the game, spend these 5 movements, maybe jumping around. That might actually be a better situation, because right now, the machine player could potentially just walk over here and also occupy that spot, which has some points in it. You know, I've talked myself into it. Let's split this movement up. We're going to spend 3 right now, and we'll send, let's see, at least 1 person over here to start a battle. And you know what? With the amount of death that the machine players' buildings can do and how mobile they are, let's just put both of these other people in here to really ensure that this battle is going to happen. We have this awesome artillery here, so we're definitely going to be killing some stuff in this battle. Yeah, let's just make this happen. Before the machine player takes their first action, they're going to activate both of their skills. The first one is Software Update. They're going to remove this card from the game. It's actually their Enable Scoring card, which is really weak and pointless at this point because Final Scoring has been enabled, so this is gone. They've decided to draw the top card from their deck. Now, the other thing they're going to do is do the Moving City, and this is going to allow them to move one of their buildings out on the board. They've decided to move their factory into the Sahar Ridge. Next up, they're going to play both these cards for their wrenches. They have 4 total, and in fact, this fortified factory right here has this little star. That means they get a victory point when they play this card for wrenches, so let's give them a point right now. They now have 30, and now they have 4 activations, and all they're going to do is activate their buildings. First of all, this factory is going to come into effect, so they'll make a new unit that gets added onto the board. Next up, these shredder drones are going to destroy one of the pilgrims in this battle over here. And finally, both of these orbital snipers will activate, and they are both going to kill people that are over here in the Calvis Ravine. I think this is going to tell us a little bit about where the machine player is planning on going. Oops, I forgot to reset this token. That was the first full round. Now it is the second round, and we'll go to the Pilgrim player. They've decided to play both of their Deploy Holos cards. This is going to get them 4 wrenches, and they're just going to activate all 4 of their buildings. So first of all, they have these 2 harvesters, which will get them a crystal from the supply for their pool. Then we have this power orb, which will actually grab a pilgrim from the supply, and they can go into an adjacent battle region, which happens to be over here. And finally, this extractor is going to pull a crystal out of the supply and put it down onto the board. So here's the 2 crystals that the harvesters dug up. It's our turn again, and man, these orbital snipers are definitely our nemesis. We got 1 person in this terrain, this area now, and that really got in the way of our plan because we were thinking that maybe we would enlist some people on this turn and then do a big move on the final turn. The problem is if we enlist now, we would be able to get 3 people down over here, which isn't a bad thing considering we only have 6 people on the board in total right now. The problem is that the machine player will likely move into this zone on their turn, which would lock it down, and I mean, I think we'll definitely lose it if we only have 1 person there. And then, when it comes to my final turn, I'm not going to have a whole lot of options available to me to do with all these people. Like, I would have the, let's see here, 5 movement available, and I could, for instance, I guess move these 2 people up into the Pilgrim land and move 2, well, I guess just like 3 over into there, but they already have 4, so that's a really bad attack. I could go over here and just attack some trogs to get 1 single crystal. That seems like a really bad deal as well, and I guess the other thing I could do is go over here, and then that teleports me all the way to the other side of the map, where again, I'd just be fighting some trogs. So I am actually in a very difficult position at this point. Part of me feels like I should just like suicide this person over into this zone again to kind of slow the machine player down, but they have 3 to my 1, so they can still move 1 of these guys into this zone, just take it, and then I'm just losing both of these zones pretty much no matter what. I'm trying to find a good turn for myself to do at this point, and I'm not really seeing anything. After thinking about it more, I just don't see a good option, so let's go ahead and just recruit some people down on the board so we have at least a little bit of flexibility on our final turn. Maybe the machine player won't invade this spot. I think that's incredibly unlikely, and in the worst case scenario, we could always take these people and invade this spot and potentially win to get a couple points against these trogs, although it's very likely there'll be more trogs there than we have, but let's just see how this plays out. It's now the machine player's turn, and just like we expected, they're going to discard both these cards to get 4 movement. They actually only need 3 movement. They're going to move all 3 of these into this zone here. That kind of locks that zone down, makes it a battle zone where they are the aggressors. And for their final movement, I guess they may as well just move this person over here. It really doesn't matter. We now go to action round 3. The Pilgrim player decides to play this Pulse Wave card for the 2 wrenches on the bottom. The first wrench will activate this power orb, which will allow them to take a unit from their reserve and put it into an adjacent battle region. So they'll go over here. They really want to win that region. And the second thing is they're just going to activate this extractor over here. That's going to take a crystal from the supply and put it down into that region. After taking that action, they are going to activate their examination skill. This costs them 1 crystal from their pool, but then they get 1 point for every crystal they have remaining in their pool, which right now is 11. So they go from 31 up to 42, and they are now actually in first place for the first time. It's our turn again, and I just realized a very small mistake that happened. This battle token number 2 should actually be in this region because we invaded here just after the Pilgrim players did. So this over here is the 3rd battle region, and it means that we are aggressing in one spot. And I think the first thing we want to do is use our Recon Forces skill. This says that for each battle in which the humans are the attackers, we can draw 1 terrain card. And to be honest, it does not matter what card it is, because we're going to take that card and then just use it to immediately discard and activate the occupation skill that we have available to us. That is going to give us 1 point for every region that we control. Currently that is 1, 2, 3, and 4, because we can't forget the ashless wetlands. So we jump up to 44 points. And now let's take our action, which will be a move action, and I just realized we actually have a better turn now than I thought we did last time around because, well, the Pilgrim player has already taken their turn, so we can spend these 5 movement actions to take these 3 from our headquarters and go into this region, and we can take these 2 people and jump into that region as well. We are still controlling this region, and we know that it's safe because the Pilgrim player cannot take any more turns, they can't jump in there, and I think we have reasonable odds anyway of winning this battle with 5 against these 2 tokens. Let's see how lucky or unlucky we get. First things first, this is going to be the 4th battle, and next let's see what this token says. It says 2 trogs and 2 crystals. That's not too bad. We can put 2 trogs there, and we can go and get 2 crystals and add them in. That's good for us if we're able to win this region. And then here's the real kicker. What is this nest token going to be? It says 2 trogs. Oh, this is great. That means that we have 5 units to the 4 of the trogs, and yeah, we are in a reasonable situation to potentially win this spot. It's now the machine player's turn, but they have no cards in their hands, so they have to do a terrain card draw action. They're going to grab the water one. There are only 2 left. They're going to pick one of these and put the other one back. And that completes the last action of the game. Let's jump into the battles. So let's start with battle number 1. The Pilgrims are the aggressors. The Pilgrim player decides to put all 3 of their people up in the region control objective. Because winning the majority seems a bit far-fetched for the machine player now, they're just going to put this down into the attrition. It's back to the Pilgrim player to play cards, and they decide they do want to. They're going to play Deploy Holos, which will allow them to move one of their people from one objective to another one. I don't know if I've actually done this ability yet. Mostly people have just been adding things to the board. They're going to take one of these people, and they'll go down into the prisoner spot. It now goes to the machine player, and they decide they are going to play this card from their hand, and this one just says that they get to add one from the reserve onto one of the battle objectives. They're going to bring this into the prisoner spot so that they can make sure that this guy doesn't get captured so that he kills somebody and they get points. It now goes back to the Pilgrim player, but they have no cards, and the machine player also has no cards. So this battle is now finished. So the Pilgrim player does win the majority. They're going to get 2 points for that. We can just mark that right here. They're now tied with us at 44 points. And they kick out the machine control token and put their own down. Next, they bounce on this capture prisoner spot so nothing happens. And finally, the machine player, they get to kill something with attrition. So this Pilgrim gets killed, and they'll get 1 point for that. This brings them up to 31. So the Pilgrim forces go back on here. We can remove this token from the board, and then these machines need to retreat. They'll go back to the Fairlost Banks. The next battle is in Jindar Sound, so we're going to take all of our units, as well as this one artillery unit token. I'm glad we finally got to use this at one point in the game. The artillery goes into the attrition objective no matter what, and this cannot be modified by other players' cards. And then we have these 3 here. We know the machine player has no cards in their hand. They are the defender though, so we've pretty much got to put both of our people up here so that we can win the majority, and then we'll put this down into the capture prisoner spot because we may as well. It's a no-brainer for the machine player. They only have this 1 token. They'll put it down here, and then they pass on playing any cards, and we also do because we have no cards. In fact, none of us players have any cards. We spent pretty much everything at this point, so this battle is over. We win that region back. We're going to get 2 points for that, so we go up to 46. We kick out this machine control token, put our own down, and we can remove this battle token. Next up, nobody takes prisoners because we have the same amount. And finally, this artillery barrage will do 2 worth of attrition to an enemy. There's only 1, unfortunately, so this guy gets killed, and we'll get a point, bringing us to 47 points. We can bring all our units back onto the board, and now let's do the next battle. This time, it's going to be the machines who are aggressing. There is a battle, so we, of course, put a crystal down onto the board, and the machine player puts their pieces down. So the machine player will put 2 into the area majority, and they'll put the 3rd one into the capture prisoners objective to stop us from coming in here with our 1 guy and capturing an attrition person and then just getting a point for it. It's now us, and we could just put this down here, but it'll just get captured as a prisoner and they get a point, so we'll put it right here. No prisoners will be captured. Nobody has any cards once again, so these battles are much more streamlined. The machine player does win, so they're going to get 2 points. And that brings them to 33. They're going to kick out our token and put their own control token down. We bounce on the prisoner's objective right here, and then finally the machine player can take their units and put it over in the spot. So they go into the Kalas Ravine, we can remove the battle token, and then we have to retreat with our 1 unit. Doesn't terribly matter, we can just go over here to Darkwalled. And finally, let's evaluate battle number 4. We'll put a crystal into the region, and then we have 5 people to the 4 of the Trogs who will be controlled by the Pilgrim player. This battle is going to be pretty simple. It's just like the others. That's kind of what happens once everybody uses all their cards. We know that there are 4 of the Trog tokens, so if we put all 5 up here, we will gain the majority. We'll get 2 points for this, and we'll also get 4 points that are over on the board for controlling it, so this is a 6-point move versus, going down here with, these guys and trying to do some attrition. We can maybe do get 4 points by killing off 4 other people. This definitely makes the most sense, and yes, the Pilgrim player, they're controlling this, and there's really not much of a point because the Trog player cannot actually get victory points, so they'll just put all 4 of them down into the attrition spot. Nobody plays any cards, so we win it. We're going to get 2 victory points for it, which brings us to 49 points. We can put our control token down into the Cameron Seas. Nobody takes any prisoners, but these 4 Trogs will kill 4 people from this spot, somewhat inconsequentially. So this 1 lone soldier goes back to the Cameron Seas. We can get rid of this battle token. And now these 4 Trogs would retreat, except there are no legal spots on the board to put that token down because it needs to be an uncontrolled spot. So they're just removed, and it's pretty inconsequential because the game is essentially over at this point. All players now score for their prisoners, and we all have 2. So we are at 49. We'll go up to 51 points. And we've got a fancy chip for that. The final thing for us to do is scoring. This is the final scoring chip. So again, everybody gets 1 point for every crystal in regions they control out on the board, and whoever has the most points after that is going to be the winner. Let's go ahead and start with the machine player. So they've got 1 point over here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 crystals in their control. They were at 35, so this brings them up to 52. Up here, the Pilgrim player has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. They are currently at 46, so that's going to bring them to 61 points. And finally, let's do us humans. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We are currently at 51 points, so this brings us up to 66 points, and we are the winners. The Pilgrims have 61 points, so only 5 points behind, and unfortunately for the machines, they ended the game with 52. Well, I hope you enjoyed this playthrough. I found this one to be quite interesting and honestly a little challenging to record because there are so many different things that you need to balance as you're playing all these different player characters. On the surface of it, it seems almost simple, like just control as many regions as you can and try to have the most crystals in those regions. But there are so many different things that are pushing and pulling you in different directions. For instance, you have the base skills that each player has for their different races. The way we played it, there was the default and then a random one. And that one skill, that one random tiny little card that you get, will definitely do big things as far as how you are going to be approaching that specific play of the game. I think to a certain extent, the Pilgrim player should have probably played to their skill a little bit more, where they were able to pick up crystals from regions where they are in battles. Maybe they should have recruited more people and sent them out in suicide missions more so that they were in more battles. They could steal crystals from regions that they lost. They could maybe just do attrition in those regions to try and take a couple points, take the crystals away from their other opponents and put them into their pool and try to get points for that. That would maybe have been a good strategy for them to kind of take. As it was, the Pilgrim player just essentially did not do very many battles and mostly relied on the engine building of the buildings that they have available to them, which let them just put crystals on the board and just grab crystals from the supply and put them down into their pool. And they ended up being pretty close. They had a very good score for kind of how weak they almost felt at one point kind of earlier in the game. They definitely went hard for a building strategy. The machine player, it kind of felt like I had them trip over their own shoelaces at one point in the game because they seemed to be being very dominant. They were a definite threat to pretty much everybody. Their buildings are so effective at removing other people's units from close regions of battles that are happening already, as well as the faraway regions. I think there was a moment where they probably should have either gone harder at the Pilgrims to try and take over their area, or just gone for the Trog area in the middle just to try and occupy more zones. It seemed like for how potent they were and how many units they had out on the board, they had a surprising lack of regions controlled when the game actually ended. And I blame myself. I think I was getting a little bit too into the cool buildings that they were doing and just killing everything as opposed to really trying to get enough units out on the board. It probably should have built more of those factories. Also, they really suffered for running out of cards, and they have a building called the Matrix, which lets them activate 4 wrench and then take a card and put it face down on that building, and then they can use it in any battle region, not just one that matches the terrain tactics. So they can't play that card for the abilities in the top left, but I feel like if they built one of those early, they could have maybe spent wrenches on that instead of a couple other things and always had cards, so they were always ready to be much more potent in the battles that they were actually fighting. So yeah, they played well, but they definitely did not have as good of a score at the end. I think that was a big reason why. Finally, with the human player, the one that we controlled, I think we definitely played to the strengths of that character to a certain extent. I mean, I think 3 out of the 4 rounds, we discarded a card in order to make victory points equal to the number of regions that we controlled. But I am somewhat regretting not getting an airstrip down, maybe even in the first turn. I didn't want to put it into that one zone that was just adjacent to 2 zones. I wanted to put an airstrip down in a spot that was adjacent to like 5 or 6 zones and then activate it and throw these tokens around into regions where we weren't already, just to occupy them without a battle. But it seemed like I got a little bit too behind, and by the time that almost made sense, so much of that area of the board was already occupied that it just didn't. That being said, that one long, skinny region that the human player controlled, it was adjacent to at least 1 Trog territory. So if I had built the airfield there, I would have been able to use it at least 1 point and probably gotten more points for it. That being said, the human player did win, so I don't think they necessarily made too many mistakes. They played to their strengths as much as they could. They really utilized that card, which let them draw cards from those terrain tactic areas and use those in that specific battle. It did mean that they had a very large deck, so their deck was a bit watered down, not a tight deck at all, versus the machine player. I tried to have them destroy cards to keep their deck lean so they go through it quickly and just hit the really powerful cards they wanted with that software update ability they had, but it did not quite turn out for them like I had hoped. So there's one more thing I want to mention. None of the battles had a person lose control of the region that they tried to attack, and I think that was probably some groupthink within my own mind. That is definitely a thing that happens when you play this game with others, and it also meant that people were kind of evaluating those battles in a very similar way, and I will admit that's probably because it was the same brain evaluating all of them around the table. I tried to make those very interesting and interesting as I could, but I think I maybe could have done a slightly better job of that. Anyway, I think that pretty much wraps this up. I would love to thank everybody who's been supporting this channel through Patreon, including the producer level pledges. If you too would like to directly support the channel, you could do so at patreon.com/JohnGetsGames. Also, if you'd like to see more full game playthroughs like this one, as well as in-depth board game reviews and vlogs, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.